Okay, so I'm hoping you see me and you can hear me. It is the top of the hour on Sunday night, and I'm Dr. Boz. We are talking keto, and we are talking about enlightenment. So if you are curious about that, stay tuned, and we will do our best to satisfy. So I love it when the fans tell me where you're from. Several of you have checked in, and if you can give me an affirmation that you can hear and see me, I will be thankful. As you can see, I guess the regulars can see that I am once again here in South Dakota. And I am, yes, we can see and hear you. Awesome. Thank you so much. I am headed to Tampa again tomorrow morning with, it's going to be a pretty hot minute before I come back. So there have been lots of goodbyes again. This will be the second or third trip that I've made to Tampa in the effort of moving. So the benefit of a bunch of teenagers is I have drivers to help with this time too. All right, so I'm checking some ketones and some glucose today. Really interested in how the next week is going to go for me, and I will explain that in just a minute. So here is glucose, here is ketones, ketones 1.4, glucose 89, and I am doing only okay. Today I am gonna do what I do every Sunday night, which is take a couple of supplements while I chat with you. And the reason I do that is to show you that one of the most important parts about taking any supplement is to be able to measure that they're doing what they say they're doing, unlike prescriptions. And maybe I just have too high of standards for supplements. But unlike prescriptions, you don't have a guarantee. So test. So I'm going to take what was in the cupboard, which is all the other stuff's been packed. Or if it's not been packed, I don't know where it went. But I am going to open up a bottle of BHB ketones in a capsule is what I like to call them. And my Dr. Boz ratio 63, somebody calculated it for me. Thank you. Again, looking at several of the things that I like to teach on this channel are not just how to be keto, but how do you get the best life out of all the sacrifices that staying consistently keto will get you. And I am taking about 4 of these. So we'll measure my numbers at the end of the show. When it comes to the measurements, not just in my ketones and glucose, but also looking at other ways that you can measure progress. I think some of my origin story maybe is that I am a physician that's never touched a paper chart. That I've always had metrics helping me get a better understanding of my patients and how well I'm doing. Measure yourself or it doesn't really count. I'm also outside and it's really hot, so that feels good. Okay, so some of the other places that we measure improvement is how well you progress through an algorithm or a plan. And if you've been following me at all in the last few weeks, I've been packing up my house, moving my family across the country to Tampa. And in that, there isn't a guarantee of my rhythm. So as I look to live in a hotel for a couple more weeks, but this time I've partnered with my husband to do a couple things. He doesn't know that I was going to actually do this until this show. So yeah, he's not watching. I'll just have to tell him later. So we are going to start with, if you haven't been following your numbers, that Instagram link down there is where I like to post that each week I do a fast. Sometimes it's only a 36-hour fast. When I'm in a really good rhythm, I try to get to 72, but I haven't found that rhythm recently. We've been trying to do some better creative storytelling with our channel. And if you've been watching the last video that we put out, it was a day in the life, which is definitely not a standard operating procedure for me. And I hope that that video has a follow-up that you can see a day in the life when I get to Tampa and what that looks like for my kids. Their school starts in just early August here, so we are trying to get stable on the other side of things. And I hope that today's video shows you a little bit about what I also am looking for in Tampa. So let me begin with, I wanted to hop over and show you some reviews. Oh, maybe I won't be able to do that today. Did I do that right? Oh no, I'm sorry, it's the wrong one. Show you some reviews. Here we go. First of all, a couple of you, or quite a few of you actually, went into the community tab on the channel. If you haven't done that before, any YouTube channel has this word community, and I try to post things about my life, but also just about that might link to some of the stuff that we're talking about, maybe what I'm researching. And this has been some of my research for the last week. Is I visited a labyrinth for the first time, and one of my dear friends who's been nurturing this little town into what I thought was the coolest labyrinth I've never seen a labyrinth, but I didn't know the process, and she walked through that with me. We're going to talk more about that in the show, but I asked people if they knew what it was, and several of you have commented. Let's see if I can look at those comments here, and have been, many of you know what that is, and some of you even led me to a labyrinth that's in Tampa. So that was one of the things I was going to ask for on the show. Is I am curious about these. I would like to figure this out a little more. I've never seen one or heard about one. I messed it up for being amazed, thinking it's something you're supposed to get lost in. And I guess you can say you get a little lost, but it's kind of a meditative loss. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. But if you haven't replied to that, if you know of, or if you've engaged in a labyrinth, if you've done one of those, I would totally be curious about that. And so I look at those and I respond to those. That is not a delegated task on my channel. That's me. And then I have another announcement that last week I asked for anybody to leave a review if you've been using the workbook. And there is not a post since the last one. Dory was there last week. I read that last week. So if you've read or if you're using keto-Continuum, the workbook, I sure would love it if you leave me a post, leave me a response, because again, I read all of these. And as an independent author, this is a super important part of the algorithm to Amazon, is that people leave reviews. I know you hear that from lots of people, but I really, really would love the help. If you have a bit of a moment to leave a review, that would be great. I do want to give away a big reveal here, that if you're tuned in live, you're going to get a pretty, well, I don't know, some of you will get a pretty nice, I think gift is the right word. Maybe it's not the right word, but that's the word I'm thinking of. Let's see here. I want to push that button. There we go. So yeah, we're talking about keto and reaching enlightenment. I have a couple of books here that I've been looking at, so I'll share those, and we'll share how I'm going to try to find my way back to enlightenment and show you where I've been there before and how my exposure to that's about as advanced as that of a labyrinth. So this is the big giveaway here. Actually, there is going to be a giveaway at the end of the show. But anybody watching live, I was looking at several of the old links from the coupons, and there are some unused ones. So I'm about to show you what the unused ones are. So if you have that, if you can go to your computer, if you can put it on your phone or however, and put the audible.com UK/ACX promo, or the same one for co.uk, you're going to find that there are some answers to some giveaways here. All right, so let's see here. There we go. So yeah, so keep in mind there are the United States people have been doing a better job of collecting these free audiobooks. There was a little bit of mess up. These were really early when I was starting to give this off, and I think there was a misunderstanding that they would type the message into the comments, and so there was a whole bunch of comments with the codes in it. But you actually need to type in this website, and inside the website, this code gets you a free audiobook. So notice that Any Way You Can has 2 free audiobooks that are sitting out there. So anybody that types them in right now will get, and you're from outside the United States. This is one of the global market, 2 of the global market keys, I guess. And that one is for Any Way You Can. But the global market for keto-newbie is the one that begins with JX. And then the one for keto-newbie inside the United States that was unused begins with a JZ. These were from like 3 months ago. And so I just want to remind people that are here live, when you type that in at the end of the show, please report back who gets the free audiobook. I love seeing that. The books have really been helpful, especially I wasn't planning on doing an audiobook for either of them, but I love audiobooks. And the process of recording one seemed like another pretty heavy lift at the time. But I can't believe how many of my patients, when I'm trying to educate them, yes, you can get lost in the maze of YouTube and watch lots of YouTube videos, but an audiobook with a linear story about how success was found in a couple of other patients it's just been golden for their success. And it turned out way better than I was planning. So if you are an audiobook lover and you are from the right regions, type those in, and hopefully before all this is over, we see in the comments somebody who's won those. So there are 4 books sitting there for people to give away. All right, so let's get back to keto and enlightenment. I have had several of the people in the Neurons group mention that they wanted to talk about this. I mentioned it a little bit in the course, the online course that I teach, and I am an internal medicine physician, so chronic disease management is what I do. When I look at my favorite organ to focus on, to really help patients with, it's been the brain. So I always think of the ability to reach enlightenment kind of coincides with a calm brain that's lacking in anxiety, that's lacking in pathology, whether that's from chemotherapy, radiation, poor sleep, diabetes, whatever has injured the brain, to get them back to the healthiest level. I always use this as the ultimate marker. But I'll be honest, that is a difficult reach. It's a difficult level. To reach an enlightenment becomes this kind of like a firefly. It fleets and stops and goes and stops, and reaching it never seemed as consistent until I was using the ketogenic diet. And now it's almost, when patients are ready for it, I can almost script to them what it's like. So I have the idea of sharing enlightenment. I started by asking the people in the Neurons group. So the Neurons group is a private Facebook group where all of the folks that have gone through the Consistently Keto online course have access to this, and they share their journey. They ask their questions. I answer some of them, and I teach others to answer the questions while still watching that supervising role to say, are they answering it right? Did they run into a place where they couldn't quite get the best answer for their situation? And when I posted this past week about enlightenment, and if anybody's ever felt enlightenment, I picked a few responses that I thought were great. So John said, as a boy, he had a dream that prompted him to learn guitar. And this was when he said, since then, I felt like I'm a seeker. He says, I pray and meditate daily for God to show me the next step in my journey. And he writes a little bit more about finding the guiding principles for his spiritual journey, for using this as a spiritual exercise. But one of the things he says at the end of his post was, I don't have a soul, I am a soul. I just think that really represents that unity between your spirituality and your physical body, and how easy it is that that's something people don't talk about. That's something that's hard to reach. And even when you are practicing your faith, the process really does wrinkle the best and the most dedicated of patients. Their brain just kind of says, I can't do that. And when I get them into a state of ketosis, when I get them into practicing ketosis, I am so impressed at how many more patients have been able to reach this. So as Joseph goes on to say, he says, I love partially fasting in the summertime. And he says, even though I throw off the weight of material attachments through, he says, I throw off the weight of material attachments through contemplation and fasting. So I think of that as meditation and fasting, which is truly where this clearing of the brain is super important, but is almost an obsolete task for those that have been struggling with anxiety, with depression, with poor sleep problems. He goes, I feel inspired when I look around the surroundings of nature and I reflect on this gift of life. What can I do today that can make a difference in the world? And that just captures so much of what the feeling of enlightenment has been for me and for several of the patients that get there. So Ruthie writes in and says, keto has been a spiritual journey for me. Learning to listen to my body. Again, I find this very common language that happens in the small groups that I lead, but as well as the patients one-on-one that get to a consistent process of keto and then really don't expect that this was going to come. And the day it does, it's very interesting to hear, I've been struggling for so long, but this has become clear to me. Those are the way the words usually come out when the patient's explaining what they're excited about. She says, choosing the best options, not just what feels good, kind of a stoic statement there. And then learning to say no to what's normal and risk doing life differently. Good job, Ruthie. She goes on to talk about her legacy, setting an example for my family. This is a legacy that's new to me, and that I want them to see that what we eat does matter. Keto has brought me closer to God because I'm changing from the inside out. And I couldn't do it without him, without her spiritual leader. Yes. A couple more that I just think are worth pointing out because they really captured my heart. This one especially. Candace writes in and says, I have experienced enlightenment. I did a 7-day fast with Grandma Rose when Grandma Rose was in the hospital. And Grandma Rose was my mother, was hospitalized for COVID. And the number of people praying and fasting it was overwhelming to watch, to read all of those posts. Even though I couldn't read them at the time, I really enjoyed going back and looking at the number that prayed and were present for her. She goes, it was definitely enlightenment. I had been doing these 72-hour fasts for a while with Grandma Rose and others way before she got sick and ended up in the hospital. Again, she said, it is difficult to explain. So in the reel of Facebook, they said, well, explain what enlightenment feels like to you. It's difficult to explain. I spent a lot of time in prayer during that time, and I felt a connection with Father that was closer than before. I knew when he was showing me things, and then it came to pass. Amazing. Clear thinking and deep understanding with a great peace. And then this might be the funniest one. Rob Barnett, who has been one of the heroes that we have starred on our show, but he said, enlightenment is when my ketones are over 8. And of course, you do not get ketones over 8 unless you are practicing the churn of ketosis, like you are in advanced ketosis. So probably during a fast, he goes, I've had brain fog, and it's a novelty feature of fasting for me. I get this enhanced memory recall, almost a photographic memory. I have used it to understand and capture information that I missed the first time through something. He goes on to say that the process, he rates it like a 90% photographic memory, but it's only for a day when his ketones are really high like that. On refeed, or when he starts when he breaks his fast, it drops to about 50 to 70% that day. And then it seems to go away within a day of breaking his fast. So again, I think that's a very similar experience to what I've seen in my enlightenment, because I have experienced enlightenment one time that I'm very sure of. But I like to share that as a little girl, or as growing up Christian, you hear about this enlightenment where people say, yes, the leaders of the Bible had enlightenment, or if you go on to study theology or philosophy, enlightenment becomes this place where it truly is this absence of the chatter in your mind, a form of meditation that's really advanced, that's really quiet. And I don't know if it's just my default nature to be too busy, maybe, that was very difficult for me to hear. I thought these people from the Bible, or these people from these, philosophy chapters, just must be, their brains were just different, because I don't know anybody in my world that had fasted or that had ever seen enlightenment. And to be fair, I had never had anybody who'd really fasted. So as I engaged in trying to find that sense of enlightenment, I actually did a Bible study once where, how do you find enlightenment? How do you seek enlightenment? And again, I'm like, I don't know. I hear the list of groceries that go on in my brain when I start to look for this. This was probably about 10 years ago, but I became very mindful about trying to find patients, that as you sort through patients and you get these relationships with them, there's some patients that when you meet them, you feel this sense of enlightenment. You feel it's like they are an enlightened person, and they have found that place, that spiritual moment. And there's many times when patients come in to see you as a physician, they're filled with problems and troubles, and your energy can just drain as you see them. But every once in a while, there's this patient where I would see them on the roster, and I would get so excited, because every time you meet with them, you leave even though they had troubles and we were working on their puzzles and their medical problems and sorting it out, there was some sort of positive experience that I left energized. I left hopeful of just can I just take what you have, put it in a dropper and use it for me, for other patients. And so as I sorted through different people with enlightenment and said, what is it that they had that was the same? And indeed, they had all fasted. They had all found a time, even before keto, that they had fasted. And of course, I didn't even know what to tell them about that, but it wasn't interfering with anything that we were doing with their medical problems. So I said, okay, keep going. It seems like you're doing a lot of things right. So as I go back and look for the place where I know that I had a sense of entitlement, a sense of enlightenment, it was when I recorded this first audiobook. So again, I'd never recorded an audiobook. I was kind of nervous about doing it. And I had read some of the best practices to get your first audiobook to turn out like that somebody would want to listen to it. And I didn't have another person that I could interview. So I'd gone onto those blogs and said, what should I do to prepare? And almost all of them just said, finding this inner quietness before you begin, having this sense of really peacefulness. If you're nervous when you read an audiobook, they can feel it. And I totally have listened to audiobooks where I couldn't get past the second or third chapter because I could sense that they were nervous. And so I wanted to do a good job. And I said to my husband, because every time I do one of these brave things or these difficult things, he's got to help me, which is what he's going to do this week. He just doesn't know it yet. That his sense of support was really going to be important, because I said, I'm going to fast until I'm done recording this book. And of course, I've never recorded a book, so I have no idea how long I'm going to have. I think maybe it's going to take me 3 days to record an audiobook. And it took me 8 days. And I did make it all the way. I made it 7 days of fasting. And I'll just tell you, the longer I fasted, the more I practiced this quietness in my mind, the better the experience was for me. The less mistakes I made, the easier I could engage with what the story was telling. And this story is very compelling. It's my mother. It's what I was doing for my mother. But it was an experience I'd never had before. And the final day before I broke my fast, I can hear it when I listen to that part of the book. In fact, I've made a contest for people that when they write in to guess what chapter of, especially in the reviews of Any Way You Can audiobook, can you guess which chapter, which is at the end of the book, the last few chapters, I can hear the difference between the chapters where I broke my fast. And it's just a little bit of the clearness in my voice and the ease of my spirit. I don't know how to explain it, but I know that's what was happening. Is I would have this little ritual before I would record, or if I was kind of getting frustrated, I would pause. I would, do a little prayerful meditation, and then I'd get back to it. And as those days went by, the closer to that enlightenment day, that final day before I broke my fast, it was for sure that was enlightenment. And I know that the blessings that have come from the audiobook, again, were way unexpected. I'd never done one of these. I had no idea if it was going to turn out. I like audiobooks, but I didn't have a coach or somebody teaching me how to do this. I just did the book. And it turns out maybe I did have a coach. Maybe I did have this spiritual guidance of, really being mindful about that moment. But I don't think it was an accident of what was happening inside my brain. That if you look at that ability to open up the noisiness part of your brain and scoop out all the noise and hold that position, I find that whenever my fasting is short, or if I try to fast, so when the first few times I'm reading about fasting, the idea of fasting without engaging your spirit is just a diet without food. To truly get the engagement of why fasting is found in every culture across the globe, and it's often referred to by your spiritual leaders of every culture, is because it does clear that mind, that it does take out the noise. And I contend that the people in the time where they were writing about it in the Bible, or some of these very older readings from cultures that are Christian and non-Christian, but anytime that fasting was engaged, I just think they were closer to keto than the rest of us are today. That the neurons and the people that I try to coach are in a consistently keto state. So fasting and reaching enlightenment probably could happen at 72 hours if I was really prepared. But I think you could find enlightenment with fasting for 48 hours at that stage, at that time, because the food wasn't as processed, that it wasn't eaten as frequently, that there was a much more ketogenic, closer to carnivore type of diet at that time. So as I look to say, okay, so all right, now that's my experience. What else about enlightenment would I encourage people to look at as you find, how do I do that again? Okay. As you know, I'm moving to Tampa. There's been lots of noise and chaos in my life. I knew this was coming. I knew this was coming. I just wish it was over. As I head across the country again, knowing that there is unsettledness, what are the things that I can do to recreate some of this again? And as I look at that, I thought I would bring out a few things that I've done to try and find this place in my mind and in my heart. And my friend really helped me yesterday. Again, for those of you that don't know what a labyrinth is, I didn't. I had to Google it and look it up, and my friend was teaching me all about it, where many Christian faiths use this at a time of Easter, but many faiths use a labyrinth as a way to meditate through this journey as you follow the path mindlessly, staying on the path, and then knowing that the closer that you focus on something and the more you remove that noise from your brain, what they're asking or what they want you to work towards or look at as you're walking through this labyrinth is, how do you reach a goal that you're looking for? And I couldn't ignore yesterday as I was walking through this labyrinth how there have been some heavy things on my heart. I'm a 5th generation South Dakotan. I'm about to leave South Dakota and totally become a Floridian that lives in Tampa, that I don't have any aspirations for moving back. This is where I'm going to spend the rest of my journey, I hope. I don't like moving. My husband knows this. He's like, we're going to move one time. We're going to move to a place that he likes, and I think I'll like anywhere I live. But to let go of the journey that's been South Dakota has been hard for me, saying, I need this. I want this to have a beautiful story, a place my whole soul, as the Neurons said, my soul can really sing. And I was really having a tough time letting go. So as I walked through this, I really contemplated letting go and knowing that the first 50 years of my life, almost 40 of them have been in South Dakota. And isn't that process the best it could have been? Like, it was just like when you're throwing things away in your house, as you're moving, you're saying, yep, I can't keep everything, but this, whatever it is you're throwing away or giving away, this had its purpose. It's lived it out for the season of your life. And now it's time for it to move on, or it to not be in your life. It's done. It's good. And I really framed that in my mind as I was doing this labyrinth. I look at the other things that I do to really find focus again. So that labyrinth was one thing that I'd never used it before, but boy, if you're looking for a way to really focus on something, I kind of did lose my place a couple times, just saying, have I been to the center of this yet? Have I made it to the part where you turn around? Because you can really just find yourself journeying in a way that you're not keeping track of. Your mind, your thoughts are in a different place. The other places that I find a really good sense of focus, if you haven't done a float. So after church today, my son and I had a date with the float. And we both, if you haven't been to a float, it's a magnesium salt float where the salinity of the float of the water is so high that you, like the Dead Sea, you float, you can't sink. And so it is really one of those moments where you turn off the lights, you turn off the sound, and then you're not touching anything. So it's like you're floating in outer space. And I just find that I can really be distraction free when I do that. And so a couple of other things that help me to focus have always been being part of a women's Bible study. And I don't know anybody in Tampa yet, so I'm working towards finding a church and finding a Bible study that is going to be helping me with how do I find that place to practice getting the noise out of my brain. The second thing that I really find important are the rituals in my life. The get up in the morning, do a certain routine, find a certain bedtime that is very stable. Nothing like that is possible in the next week, as we live in a hotel for another week, and then we have to undo all this into a home. So there's going to be a while that ritual isn't going to be there. But I also know that there are some other things I can do that might help me as I look at what has worked for me before. And so I'll explain that in just a minute. The final thing that is, I think, really critical is to plan your fast. If you're going to find enlightenment, it really is. It is in a time where you march not just towards my weekly fasts, which are nice, they are fine, but really finding that zone to say I'm going to really work towards clearing out my mind, and that's the purpose of that fast. And I know if I start to do that as I get on an airplane and live in a hotel room for this next week, that's probably ridiculous. That's probably going to be setting me up for failure. So to plan out my fast, this is where I'm going to have to tell my husband to fast forward to this part right here. As I go over here and say, okay, so what is it that I think I'll do for my fasting? So I'll probably do a 36-hour fast again this week. And if you, that Instagram post down below, if you want to follow what my numbers are, I try to post my glucose and my ketones. And sometimes they're not very good. They really aren't very good sometimes, especially if I don't sleep well, or if I couldn't find a way to get my rhythm back to where it should be. but it is pretty helpful when I'm transparent, when I tell people about it. The other thing that I said to my husband that I wanted him to do with me, and he kind of growled. So I'm going to still try to do it. I hope he'll join me. In fact, when he heard my idea before he said, why don't you just let me do it and you not do it? Because this is going to make you crabby, but I'll be fine. So what is it that I'm going to plan? So for the next week, I am going to say, this is my only food. Yes, I'm going to be traveling. I'm going to be fasting. But when I eat, the food that I'm going to eat is only going to be sardines. And so you say, why would I do that? Finding, again, less noise in your life starts with simplifying it. And when you look at people who do cleanses and they do, they look at a time where their life got much healthier, taking away any of their choices becomes really important. There's a great book on a psychology book called The Paradox of Choice, where the number of options in front of somebody turns into a no decision. I think the classic experiment was they had jam sitting out, and how many people bought the jam was proportional to how few of the options were on the table. If there was only one option on the table, or maybe it was two options on the table, the sales were pretty good. But if you put 14, 10 or 7 or 8 or 4, the higher the number of options, the lower the sales. And what was happening is the choices were so many that they could not make it. They had no decision. So one of the hardest parts about stress for me is I love food. I love food. It is a place of joy. I love a glass of wine with my husband, but I also know that it doesn't play forward well when I'm in a place that's not the rhythm I'm looking for. So to clean it up, to say, I love my bubble water. That'll be on my list. I like my coffee with salt in it. That'll be on my list. And then sardines aren't something that's my favorite thing to eat, but I know the nutrients is high. And one of the things I really like about when I've done this before, I've never done it for a whole week. So I don't know, check in next week to see how I do, or follow me on Instagram and I'll tell you when I mess it up. But one of the things that when I've done like 2 days worth of sardines, just trying to get my palate used to sardines, is I can't believe how full I am at the end of that can. We're from the Midwest, so I know we're going to a place where there's fish all over the place, but I don't know. I didn't even know how to think about having going out to a restaurant which has got new flavors and a new place. That would trigger me to eat more. I'd want to try the dessert. I'd want to try a glass of wine. And so if I say, all right, I need to clean up a few things in my journey, I want to find that good rhythm. I want the enlightenment to be the best I can be as I start this new chapter of my life. And I know that if I can do a few things that I've routinely done before, and then not set too lofty of a goal. Like, don't tell my husband, or don't set the gauntlet down to say, I'm going to fast for 8 days until I feel enlightenment. I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for that. But I could give up the variety of food. I could stick with one stable food. I'm watching some of this. So there's several of you saying, sardines, I hate the taste of sardines. And I just want to tell you, before you say that, make sure you've tasted them. They are, I don't know, a lot like tuna, except they're more nutrient dense. And it's a really good idea to clean up the noise in your menu. And as a keto, I know this will work well for me. The other part that I have been waiting for, that I was going to do it was going to be somewhere around the 1st of August, so this might be as close as I get, is that I've had a continuous glucose monitor that I've been saving to help me with a reset. Again, accountability is a really big deal. When my continuous glucose monitor is on, I am strict. I follow the rules. I do not like that thing dinging at me. And I probably need a little help with that right now. So looking at the places to put a safeguard around my journey, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But take a look at the Instagram if you want to follow along to see if I make it. And I am not guaranteeing it. My husband, like he said, it would be easier if he just did it and I watched, because it's probably going to make me a little crabby. So if I look at some of the other things I'm going to do is I'm going to give away audiobooks here in just a second. But I want to check out the, I want to check out my numbers really quick again. While I do that, if you've got a question if you post it in our little chat here, I am able to see that. Dr. Boz sardine recipe or straight out of the can. Oh, that's a great question, Rhonda. So there's a couple things I really like to do with sardines. I like spices, and like give a thumbs up if you like if you've ever eaten at Potbelly. It's a sandwich place, and you say, well, what would I be doing at a sandwich place? Well, they have this amazing jar of hot peppers in oil. And so I love the oil in that. Like, so the hot peppers are great. It kind of gives the sardines a little texture. But it really, I love it when I just put a little of that oil from that can inside there. And it is, my sardines are always in oil. This one is, this one's oil. And I almost always buy them from Costco, but I don't think this is Costco's brand. This one has the skin on it. And I know it doesn't have heads, but it has the skin, and it's super good for you. So don't bash it. It's really good. A couple of other ones. Somebody says sardines give me indigestion. So the process of changing through a diet that does, I mean, you'll ask many people, tuna and sardines will give them indigestion. And I've found that if I haven't had them in a while, that can happen. There is a muscle in your gallbladder that is very used to producing bile, and it is incredibly fatty. When you have that whole can, it's a large amount of fat. So if your gallbladder is not in shape for that, and if you don't have a gallbladder, then your liver takes over. You're not going to die. It will happen. The bile production can be a little low, which is what causes the indigestion. As soon as the bile production matches the fat intake, then that indigestion goes away quite quickly. So what I'm always interested in is, if it happens to me, if I get indigestion again, it reminds me that I haven't really been as strict with eating that satiating fatty meal. And by the second day, it's usually gone. It's like, oh, my body was able to be back in shape. What I'll be very curious about is to see what my glucose does. Like, I've just had a lot of things that are naughty that they're just like, okay, I'm out to eat. I ordered a hamburger with a lettuce wrap, and they brought it with a bun, and I just ate it. I've done that. I've had, usually a glass of wine every couple of weeks I think I've had a glass of wine every week. And anytime somebody's trying to say goodbye to me, they say, come over for a glass of wine. And I'm like, I'll come over, but don't do the wine. And then about 1 in 3, we end up doing the wine. And so you're like, it just really sets me back. So I just know that these habits they're tough on me. My brain gets foggy. I don't feel as good. And to clean it up, to really be in the best form for this next season of my life, I'm all in. I want to do this. I just read something here. Ingrid said fresh sardines that are salted. I've actually never had a fresh sardine. I didn't even know you could do that. Like, I had no idea that you could eat them fresh. I just figured they needed to be pressure cooked. Otherwise, what happens to the little bones in there? And I don't know. So, someone ordered carrot cake to share. No. Don't do that either. All right. I'm going to quick check my numbers here again, and then I'll give away these books. And I'm looking for anybody. I am keto, but I get really tired around 2:00. So if you are, keto in the early stages, it can be the time where that glucose is coming down and your ability to produce ketones is sluggish. You're not in as good a shape. Your mitochondria and your fat cells are not in as good of a rhythm. It has been where when I'm coaching somebody and they're struggling with that, I give them a 2-week challenge to just swallow ketones at that time of day, or about half an hour before it happens. It's amazing when you just deliver the ketones for your body. There is more to exogenous ketones than just a fuel for your mitochondria. It does have a signaling agent. You can Google this on Google Scholar and look for the histone deacetylase communication of beta hydroxybutyrate, and exogenous ketones will activate this. But they also suppress your appetite. They give you energy, and it's quite a improvement that after those 2 weeks of the body practicing using ketones, they're now producing ketones better without the exogenous ketones. So it's a really good trick when you run into that afternoon slump. I almost opened the can of sardines instead of the can of test strips here. Let's see. So I've got red light therapy. How to up your energy? I get energy in the so when your energy in the evening is the highest, I tell patients when that happens to find your meal. So it's not uncommon for when people go keto, they first are like, oh, I can't believe how great my energy is. I got to grab a Lancet. Hold on a second. The energy that they first get from keto, they're like, oh, this is great. I have awesome energy. And I say, yeah, that's awesome. And then they say, now they come in the next time, or they come to group and say, all right, this energy is keeping me awake at night. So here's my ketone check here at the end of the hour. Again, what did I say? I had 4 of those ketones in a can. Ketones in a capsule, I mean. Yeah, so it didn't change much, 1.4 to 1.5, and then glucose of 76. But I bet if I would check this again in about 10 more minutes, it would be a little bit higher. The number of capsules that are equivalent to 1 scoop of the other powder is closer to, I did this once, closer to about 7 to 10 of them, depending on which one of the, like of the raspberry, it's about 10 capsules equals 1 scoop. Of the cucumber lemonade, it's about 7 capsules that are 1 scoop. And so if I was doing equivalent to what a scoop, but I don't usually have a scoop, so I was thinking that would be about the right amount. Maybe 5 would be a little better. But this is the reason you check. So I'll probably recheck my numbers in about an hour so that next time I take the ketones in a capsule, I know which dose to take, because it should be elevated by now. It's in my system. I should be able to measure it. And when you take these supplements, they're very expensive. Don't be taking the wrong dose, meaning check your numbers. It really is that measurable. So here's a great one. Kathy Brown says, is sparkling flavored water okay? Okay, the sport that my kids liked to play was that they went out for debate. They became master arguers with their mother. But my middle son really has mastered the ability to argue. And if there is one fight in our family where my son is wrong and my husband is right, it is this question where when something says it has essence in it, so if it's sparkling flavored water, and if you look at the ingredients and it says essence, without getting anybody in trouble and without siding with husband or son, Google the lawsuit associated with essence in sparkling water, because what's in it is right under a reporting level. And I'll tell you, the best way to know if sparkling water is okay is check your sugar at the beginning before you, like when you're fasting, and then drink the water, and then give it about 15 minutes to 20 minutes after that sparkling water. It should not raise your blood sugar. And if your blood sugar goes up, there's something going on. There's something going on. And I'll tell you, every patient that I've had do that experiment, or somebody who's been at a group or in our own house, the sugars go up. So I don't do the flavored stuff. I just take it to all water. If you're struggling with that, consider adding a little Soleil water before you have the sparkling water, or maybe after the sparkling water. Yeah, so thanks for doing the Dr. Boz ratio there. And that's about 50. So it is better than what it was at the beginning of the show. And I am probably not going to eat sardines tonight. I'm probably going to eat them tomorrow morning as my first. Maybe I won't eat them until I get to Tampa. One of the key things that I really work on when I'm traveling is that if you're going to land in a plane in a different time zone in the afternoon or evening, do not eat until sunrise. And so I'm not going to. I'm flying. The 2 boys are going to drive the car and the dog in the next couple of days, but I don't land until tomorrow night. And so I'm going to try to not eat until sunrise on Tuesday morning. and providing tomorrow morning is as good as I think it's going to be. And I've had a few hiccups in recent weeks to not be as predictable as I want. But I hope that will be better. I hope I get through to the 36 hours till Tuesday morning. Here's a question. I'll do this right before, and then I'll give away the books. This question has come up so much. So Kathy Jackson, thank you for typing this. So I get many of these questions. Is the hot tub the same results as the sauna? And I'll tell you, I have struggled to try and find really good evidence for the hot tubs in the name of autophagy. But what I did come across this last week was if you are looking for a way to enhance your immune system, really kind of create that fever response. I was reading about some of the protocols that different physicians used, or different hospitals, different ICUs used in the COVID epidemic to try and give better outcomes for their friends and family. And what did they come across? So one of the key things was comparing this pandemic to the early 1818 pandemic, where the Spanish flu took over the globe. And what were some of the practices that were very common? And one of them was that they got patients outside and exposed their skin to sun. I didn't put together that was probably really enhancing their vitamin D. I can't believe I didn't put that together. But as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, of course that's what was that. And the author put it together for me. But the other thing this author really talked about was that they also had hydrotherapy, or water therapy to heat the body. They kept the head and neck cool, but then they really put like hot towels on the front, hot towels on the back, and then used massage and hot towels to get the body's core temperature hot, as if to spark an immune response. And so he and his wife, this author and his wife, would go sit in their spa tub after being exposed to the infections of the COVID-19. And what his theory was, and he's had some really good evidence behind this as he was telling about it, that it would improve that immune response. It would practice that spike and valley of what the temperature does in a human, and how that ignites a cytokine process that really helps to cleanse out the removal of viruses. Anyway, I had not thought about that. So I don't know that I can answer the hot tub versus sauna in the world of autophagy, but I'm more inclined to say, don't be afraid of using that hot sauna, especially if you're looking for the response to that immune system and what it might be doing to that. So, all right, so here we go. I'm going to give away some of these books. Thank you for some of those questions. And gosh, wish me luck this week. Wait till I tell my husband. Yeah, I love you, honey. Let's go over here. Here we go. Okay, so again, this is how this works. As you look for the audiobooks of Any Way You Can, the first code will go to people who are outside the United States. So you'll want to type in 88SHAB2P5CDF6. And for those of you inside the United States, again, this is the audiobook where I think you can hear enlightenment in one of those chapters. And that is NYZ88ABZXQMU3. And then that is the what? Oh yes. Thanks for Steve reminding me to say, if you could push like on my on the bottom of this, it really does help. I do have a very for those of you watching this on replay, I am going to link that the next suggested video will be one of the best lectures I have on autophagy and fasting and how that's reached. And then there'll be another link to the 7-day fast that I had a patient do, and we documented it. It's a super fun video to watch. So looking at the other book is the KetoCONTINUUM. Again, this is not the workbook, but it does have the PDFs associated with it that get you all the graphs and all the outlines. And if you're outside the United States, you'll use QKWM7Z498 QEPS as the code. And if you're inside the United States, you'll use 862-ANRXN22DJK. So I'll check to make sure all these codes got used again, because I was a little amazed that there were leftover ones from a couple months ago. I'm glad if you did collect one of those on this. It looks like people were typing it in when it didn't work. And again, you got to type that code, not into the comments, but you got to type it into that website. So if you type that in, and you're the first one to do it, you'll get that free audiobook. And boy, I sure love it if you leave a review. For those of you watching on replay, I will link that next autophagy video after this one. And then after that, you're going to get one of my favorites, which is a 7-day fast by a patient who kept really good track of his numbers. And then what did we learn? What did he learn? All right, everybody, I am Dr. Boz, improving your health one ketone at a time. Follow me on Instagram, and I will see you next week for an update on my sardine challenge. And I think we have another hero we're going to highlight. So thanks for checking in, everybody.